Introducing you to people across North Carolina and around the world who put their Catholic faith into action. This is Faith Works on Catholic 540 AM Divine Mercy Radio. Now, here's your host for Faith Works, Ellen White.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Faith Works on Divine Mercy Radio. Our show highlights individuals through God's grace who put their faith into action daily. Amazing people who have an interesting, sometimes overlooked, impact on our Catholic faith. On Faith Works, we share their stories. I'm your host, Ellen White. Our guest today is John Jansen, Executive Director of the Pro-Life Action League. For decades, John has been at the forefront of pro-life advocacy, leading efforts to educate the public, engage communities, and protect the dignity of life. He joins us today to share about the League's mission, programs, and their upcoming Peace in the Womb Christmas caroling sessions. Welcome to Divine Mercy Radio, John.
Thank you, Ellen. So glad to be here.
Oh, gosh. And we just had some technical difficulties, and John is being very, very gracious. So I'm so thankful to you for that, John. All right. So let's start with the background and mission of Pro-Life Action League. Can you give us a brief history of the Pro-Life Action League and when it was founded and why?
Sure, absolutely. Okay. So the Pro-Life Action League was founded in June of 1980. By a man named Joe Scheidler, who's a name that's going to be familiar to many of your listeners. Joe Scheidler is known as the godfather of pro-life activism. He and his wife, Anne, co-founded Pro-Life Action League in 1980. But, backing up you're going to have to give the full story, you kind of have to back up a little bit and talk about what had happened in those intervening years. Many of your listeners will know from their history that 1973 was the year that the U.S. Supreme Court handed down the Roe versus Wade and Doe versus Bolton decisions, effectively making abortion legal at any point in pregnancy for any reason. And at that point, Joe Scheidler was working at a public relations firm in Chicago in the fairly early stages of what appeared to be a very promising career in public relations. And once this decision was handed down, he couldn't believe it. He thought, how on earth could we go from babies being in the womb being protected almost everywhere to being protected nowhere, and for abortion to be legal at any point during pregnancy? At that point, he and Anne were expecting their fourth child. It turned out to be a girl born a few months later. And it was just unthinkable to them that this could be the case. It could be the case in the America that they knew and loved. And so Joe continued to work at his public relations job for the next few years, the next few months. But every waking minute that he had, it seemed, he was doing pro-life work on the side. And his boss at the public relations firm took him aside at one point and said, Joe, I really think that you may want to consider making this pro-life work your full-time job, because that's really where your heart is at this point. You're spending, that's where your heart is. That's really where all your efforts are. That's where your passion is. And I think that may have been a prompting of the Holy Spirit on the part of his boss to say those words to Joe, because that really inspired him to leave that job, that very promising job, and take on full-time pro-life work. And so very soon after that, he was hired at one pro-life organization. And that was the first of a few different groups that he worked for, but then realized over the course of those next several years that where his true passion was in the form of pro-life activism. And that word activism is a word that many people are kind of turned off by. They think it has a negative connotation. They think of like activist judges or something like that. But I think, as it was used then, and as we still use that term now when we talk about pro-life activism, the term, we would say it has a very positive connotation. It's people who take their belief about the value of human life and the evil of abortion and put that into action in the public square in some way, either doing pro-life demonstrations, rallies, standing outside of an abortion clinic, praying, sidewalk counseling, things like that. One thing, and I should have mentioned this earlier, Ellen, I'll just throw this in now because to illustrate the point of activism, it was attending a pro-life rally in October of 1972 that was the first thing that really kind of set Joe's mind on, the fact of and the importance of this issue. So again, 1972, 3 months before. So the Roe versus Wade case had been heard by the Supreme Court at that point, but it hadn't actually been decided. Wouldn't be decided for a few months later. And it was, going to this rally and getting a flyer that showed an image of an aborted baby on it. That really just convicted him. But this was necessary that there was a need for people in the church to dedicate their lives full time to this work. So one of the things that Joe had done then a few months later, after he quit his job and got into pro-life, is he attended a meeting that was organized by a very saintly priest named Father Paul Marks, who was the founder of Human Life International. And Joe and Ann, his wife, went to this meeting in Chicago. They expected hundreds of people to be there, and instead it was maybe 10 or 12 people there. And again, they looked around and thought, where is everybody? And Father Marks, talked to Joe afterward and said, I think you have a calling. There aren't many people here. Not everyone has a calling to do this work full time, but you have a calling. And again, that was the Holy Spirit really, communicating very clearly that Joe Scheidler and his wife Ann, had this vocation, if you will, to do pro-life work, full time and really give their lives to it. So fast forward a few years, in 1980, Joe had come to realize that there was a need for a new organization focused on pro-life activism, focused on giving people outlets for putting their beliefs into action in the form of protests, demonstrations, rallies, sidewalk counseling outside abortion clinics, things like that. And so that's why the Pro-Life Action League was born.
That's so great. And I'd imagine, John, that the organization has evolved over the years, especially, 45 years. It's such a long time. What are some of the major changes in focus or strategy that they've implemented, or that you guys have implemented?
I would say that, Sure. I would say over the years, the overall mission of the Pro-Life Action League has remained more or less the same, of giving people the opportunity to fight abortion in their own local communities. You don't have to. The idea is you don't have to be a politician. You don't have to be educated. You don't have to be, have to have lots of money. You just need to have a heart for unborn children. And and a desire to put those beliefs into action, and the belief that anyone can do this. This is not. It doesn't. You don't need to. We want the barrier to entry to be very, very short, small, whatever image you want to use. Right. You want to have no barriers of entry. You don't need to worry about getting certified or going to a classroom. You just go out and do it. That's always been the motto that Joe Scheidler had, and the motto that we always have as pro-lifers is: if you have an idea, do it. People will very often come to us with their own pro-life ideas, and very often we'll say, "Well, it's an interesting idea. It's not necessarily our idea, but hey, more power to you. Go ahead and do it." And so that's we always want to encourage people. Like there's no referee that says that you have to there's no committee that you have to run your idea by. You can certainly ask someone for your idea. That's fine, and people will do that. But our mentality is kind of generally, you have an idea for fighting abortion, go ahead and do it. If you want to do that, we'll be happy to give you some advice. But go ahead and do that. If you go to our website, prolifeaction.org, there's a whole section called Take Action at the top of the page. And if you click on that tab at the top of our website, the Take Action page, there are any number of ideas that people can implement in their own local communities. Things like speaking out at a city council meeting, leading a protest, leading a prayer vigil, things like that. Now, not every action is going to resonate with every person because there are different types of people. It's like St. Paul says in his letter to the Corinthians about there are many parts, one body. The eye can't say to the foot, you're not an eye, you're not important. We all have a role to play in the church, and we all have a role to play in the pro-life movement as well. If you're definitely afraid of speaking publicly, well, maybe speaking out at a city council meeting is not your thing, but you can show up at a protest. You can show up at a prayer vigil. Anyone can do that. You can get some leaflets and pass them out silently. You can put them on car windshields, things like that. There's a role to play for everyone in the pro-life movement, and that's what we want to give people as many opportunities as possible.
Yeah, I love the information that you provide there at the website under the Take Action tab. There's so much information, and certainly you could spend time praying over the various activities that you can participate in and really be encouraged in that. And I love also that you say you can come in at any point. You don't have to be trained or certified in a particular area to do that. So you just need to have a heart for the unborn and standing up for them. Absolutely. You were going to say something, John. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah. What I was going to say, as far as how our mission has evolved, one thing I would say, and this is a fairly recent development or modification, you might say. There was a time not too long ago where we would say publicly that we are working to make abortion unthinkable, or working to end abortion or eradicate abortion. We don't use that language anymore. Does that mean that we have sort of raised the white flag and kind of given up on that? No, but I think it's kind of one of the realizations that we have come to since Roe versus Wade was overturned, since the Dobbs v. Jackson decision. Mm-hmm. What we have seen is that it might be that at this point we have kind of reached an impasse from a legal standpoint, and that we're the sort of the legal patchwork that we have in our country, while very far from ideal, this might be the way it is for a long, long time. And that we might just have to kind of work within this framework. And we're still doing everything we can, obviously, to try to save as many babies as we can. But we have to just have to recognize that.
I want to ask, because I'm trying to get a visual of what it is that you're saying. So we're at an impasse now. What are you thinking that the landscape looks like that would make it different for you not to use that terminology, working to eradicate abortion?
I think prior to the overturning of Roe v. Wade, there was, I think, a mentality that a lot of people had. There hadn't been a lot of thinking through what it was going to be like if Roe versus Wade was overturned, because it was almost so far in the future, so almost inconceivable that we just thought, okay, if Roe versus Wade is overturned, that's going to end abortion. We're going to be no more abortion. And obviously now Roe versus Wade has been overturned for 3.5 years now. Do we still have abortion in our country? Yeah. Very much so, because it's not as if now it's headed back to the states. Right. The states can do what they want. Some states are very pro-life and have done pretty much have effectively banned abortion. Other states, it's wide open. Our Pro-Life Action League is based in Illinois, where we have abortion legal at any point in pregnancy for pretty much any reason. Just a couple months ago, a new abortion clinic opened in Chicago that openly advertises abortion up to 34 weeks. I don't think they're doing abortions really that late very much, if at all, but they're advertising that. So, that's just out there, Well, and also, too, I want to interject that there are companies that are advertising that they'll pay for their employees to travel to different states that, are providing abortions late in the game, too. Absolutely. So, exactly. Right. Yeah. And we know now that the abortion pill, mifepristone, accounts, and has been for several years, accounting for the vast majority of abortions are now done by pill, more than 60%. And so, and those can be given, and most of them are given in person at an abortion facility, but they can also be ordered online, and they can also be ordered. Some estimates are around 10%, I think, of abortion pills are ordered online, sometimes from sources outside the country. Whether that's legal or not, that's a different question, because whether it's legal or not, it's still being done.
It's so atrocious.
How can we solve that? That's a problem that's vexing the pro-life movement right now, and vexing elected officials and everyone. So we might just be at the point where this is the reality, and we have to just deal with this reality. What we have focused on for the past few years, more and more, is every single chance we get to talk, when we have a chance to talk about abortion, is to talk about the reality of unwanted abortion. To use that, to talk about that reality, that so often women who have abortions do not want them. This is not me saying this as a pro-life activist. This is women themselves who have had abortions saying this. Women who had abortions very often will say that, in some cases, it's actually outright coerced, where someone literally is forcing them to do it. Or it's a situation where in some way it illustrates something that the woman does not want, where she is, where it goes against her beliefs or preferences, where, a woman will admit, very often that if she had had more support, she would have decided to keep the baby, things like that. You add those together, you can look at the data in such a way that's very honest and say that most abortions are unwanted. And if we can at least get people in the wider culture to recognize that, even people who call themselves pro-choice, just a few months ago, we created a flyer that's directed at pro-choice people. That we want this flyer to get out to people and pass it out at libraries, at train stations, wherever you college campuses, and it's geared toward pro-choice people. And on the front it says it asks the question, pro-choice, as if to say, like, are you pro-choice? And it says a call to action. And it's all about this reality of unwanted abortion. It looks like a pro-choice flyer. We want to get in our culture and really kind of plant this seed among people who call themselves pro-choice to help them realize that, you know what, you say you're pro-choice, I don't think you really are. Because if you really realize that so many abortions are unwanted, I think you might reconsider that.
Yeah, I think that's great that you're engaging right there in the culture with that community. And you're educating them without even them realizing it. That is fantastic. Yeah. All right. So that's one of many programs, John, I'm sure, that the League operates. Can you highlight some of your key programs or campaigns that you've got going on throughout the year?
Sure. Okay. So throughout the year, there are 4 major nationwide events that we hold. The first is called I guess my favorite, I should say, one we did most recently, is the National Day of Remembrance for Aborted Children. This is held every year on the second Saturday in September. And the primary purpose of the National Day of Remembrance is to hold prayer vigils and memorial services at the burial sites of aborted babies. There are about 60 of those nationwide. And that's the primary purpose. The secondary purpose being to hold vigils at other memorial sites that are dedicated to the honor of abortion victims or just unborn children generally. Okay. The primary purpose, though, again, is to go to the actual burial sites of aborted babies because, we as Catholics we're a sacramental people, and it's interesting about this particular event because Pro-Life Action League, our organization, we're not explicitly Catholic, and we're not affiliated with our local diocese officially, although we have a very good relationship with them. I mean, currently all of our employees are Catholic. It's just the way it's been for a long time. But this particular event that we coordinate, it's the probably the vast majority of people who participate in it and who hold services are Catholic. Just kind of the way it works. And I think there's something about that we as Catholics kind of instinctively get this idea of, the importance of going to the places where unborn children are laid to rest. Right. That's why we have, cemeteries. It's why we have, relics in our altars at Mass. The idea of going to a place, and actually that it's more important to go to a place than it is to just simply, think about it. It's more. That's why it's better to go to Grandma's gravesite than to just pray for Grandma. Pray for Grandma, that's fine, but go to her gravesite, that's even better. And right. Repose of her soul there. That's taking it to the next level. And in a similar way, praying at the gravesites of aborted babies, there's an added, I think, spiritual component to that, you might say. I've often thought that when you go to the gravesite of aborted babies, that those babies that are buried there, we never had the chance. We on this side of the veil never had a chance to meet these children. We never had a chance to know them. Certainly, we don't even know their names. Their names their identities are known only to God. But at the same time, while they do have a very distinct identity, that only God knows. In a similar way, though, they kind of represent all other aborted children who have been killed, who have other identities, obviously. I think you could look at it similarly to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery. The soldiers that are buried there have distinct identities. They had a name. God knows what their names were. We don't know what their names were, but they have real identities. But they, in some sense, though, they have they kind of also represent all unknown soldiers as well, and all soldiers who have ever died in service to our country as well.
Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so this is the second Saturday in September, the National Day of Remembrance. What are a couple of the other things, and then we'll move on to the next section here.
Sure. Well, we also have prior to that we have the National Pro-Life Bridges Day. We did that earlier this year. That was it's in the summertime. Usually the last week in July is when we do that, where we pick one day. It's usually a Friday, and we encourage people to go out on a local highway overpass with banners that say "Abortion takes a human life." We usually get at least like 50 or 60 teams to do this, and the idea is very simple. You stand on a highway overpass for a couple hours, holding that banner with that message. And believe it or not, over the course of those couple hours, we can reach 1 million, 2 million people across the country with the pro-life message. And at any given time when people are traveling on the road, there's a certain percentage of them that are traveling that are women who are seriously considering abortion, and they're seeing a pro-life message. So very possibly, when we were out there with those banners, we are contributing to lives being saved in that way.
So great.
It's really an amazing thing, and that's one of those things that's really easy to do. It's just a matter of getting a pro-life banner kit from us at a relatively low cost, and we provide it to you, and you go out there and you get a handful of people. It takes a very small number of people, and you go out and you do that. And it doesn't have to be done just on that one Friday in July. It can be done any time of year. And
right.
A lot of the people that we work with for that particular event do it at times throughout the year. We just heard from a guy yesterday in the Philadelphia area who's planning to do that in a couple weeks. He did it last summer with us. He's doing it again on a regular basis. So God bless him.
Exactly. And I'm curious, John, I'm sure that it takes a lot of volunteers to play a part in the Pro-Life Action League. What kind of roles do they play, and how can someone get involved if they're just hearing about it and they feel that tug on their heart?
Well, the best thing I would recommend is to go to our website, prolifeaction.org, and go to our contact forms, click on contact, and fill out our contact form and say, I want to get involved in pro-life activities. Where can I start? And we will get in touch with you. I mean, I'm the one that actually answers all of our incoming email.
That's
so
great.
if you go to our website, prolifeaction.org, fill out our contact form, I'm going to be the one that sees that message, and I'm going to be the one to respond to you. And, we can have a conversation, and we can kind of determine where your strengths might be and how your strengths might be best utilized, in the pro-life movement. So that's how I would recommend it.
And is there an opportunity at that point too, John, if somebody's calling, like this gentleman that called from Philadelphia, to connect with other people in his area?
Yes, absolutely. Because thankfully, because we have been at Pro-Life Action, have been around for so long, we've been around, for 45 years now, we have contacts all over the country. We happen to be based in Aurora, Illinois, in the Chicago area, but that just happens to be where we're based. We work with people all over the country. We work with people in your area, in Raleigh and elsewhere in North Carolina, Philadelphia, Alaska, Hawaii, everywhere. So if you contact us, no matter where you're listening to us, whether it's in North Carolina or wherever, we will be able to put you in touch with other pro-lifers in your area and to let them help you, because we know a little bit about the pro-life scene, but there's a really good chance that folks in your area are going to know a lot more about it. We will be happy to put you in touch with them.
So great. And, I want to talk a little bit about this Peace in the Womb Christmas caroling outreach program. That's one of the many programs that you guys are a part of. And I know that we have a couple here. One has already happened actually today. And then the next one is happening next Saturday, December 20th at 7 o'clock. But let's talk a little bit about this program. It certainly stands out And I want you to explain a little bit about what it is, John, and what participants can expect with this particular program.
Sure. So yeah, Peace in the Womb Christmas Caroling is what we call this. And it's one of our favorite events of the year. One of the longest running that we've done. We started doing this in 2003.
Wow.
At that time, we were doing it just in Chicago. That's where we're based here, and so we started it here. And then a few years later, we took it nationally. We said, why aren't we encouraging people to do this all over the country? It was kind of a no-brainer. Like, why on earth wouldn't we encourage people to do this elsewhere? The idea at that time, it was a little bit different then. We originally called it the Empty Manger Christmas Caroling. The idea was that the empty manger had a dual symbolism. On the one hand, it stood for the expectation of the Christ child, in the Advent season, waiting for Christmas. But an empty manger also showed the emptiness when an abortion happens, because there's a spot prepared for a baby, but then that baby never comes because that baby's life is taken. And so we actually created a manger out of wood, put hay in it and everything. We still bring that out with us, and a couple of the groups do as well. For some reason, the empty manger symbolism never caught on too much, though. So a few years ago, we decided to change the name to Peace in the Womb Christmas Caroling, and that seems to have caught on quite a bit better, I think. And we also, along with that, created banners that say, "All I want for Christmas is peace in the womb." And so anyone who wants to lead one of these Peace in the Womb Christmas Caroling events outside their local abortion facility, we will send them a banner. All they have to do is pay the cost of shipping. So basically, our supporters, we have a very generous group of supporters who contribute to allow us to be able to do that. So basically, all people pay is shipping, and then we provide them with a banner that they can bring, and kind of tell the public what they're doing. Now, why do we do this? Why do we go and sing Christmas carols outside abortion clinics? Because I'll admit, it's a little bit odd. I mean, it's a little bit odd the juxtaposition of those two things is a little bit strange. But kind of thinking through it, okay, what is Christmas all about? Christmas is about the joy of a baby being welcomed, right? Welcoming the Christ child into the world. Abortion is the opposite of that, okay? And that's why women go to abortion clinics, because they feel trapped. They feel that they have nowhere else to go, and they're really acting out of desperation. And so we're going to bring the joy of Christmas, to a place of despair. And that's really what Christmas is. Jesus coming into the midst of the world to free people from their sins and remind us that we're destined for something greater. That we're not meant for this world, we're meant for something greater. And obviously we go in the hope that babies will be welcomed instead of rejected. And we know every time we do this, there are babies that are saved. You can never make a guarantee. I can't guarantee that if you go to and take part in your local, Christmas caroling event, that you're going to contribute to a baby being saved. But I can pretty much guarantee you that somewhere across the country, when we do this, over the course of this month, that it's going to happen. And, last year in Boston, there was one particularly great save that we heard about, where there was a group singing carols, and then a woman came up, a woman who spoke only Spanish, and spoke in Spanish to one of the women who was singing, and told her that, I heard the carols, I heard the singing, and I decided I couldn't go through with it. Very similar thing happened in Milwaukee. Interestingly, what happened in Milwaukee, Wisconsin last year was there were a group of abortion clinic escorts. These are women and men who volunteer to, usher women into the abortion clinic and kind of keep them away from sidewalk counselors and other pro-lifers. And there was one of the escorts who asked for a songbook from the pro-lifers, and she legitimately sang along with them.
Wow.
I don't know what the Holy Spirit was doing there, but there was she was in some way touched by this Christmas. It reminded me a little bit of the story of the Christmas truce in World War I. The story of the famous Christmas truce in 1915. It's an amazing story. And we're not having into that now, but many of your listeners will be familiar with that. So that's the kind of thing that can happen at this event. One of the things that we're doing this year now that's brand new, we actually just this year have done this and have provided to our Christmas caroling, or Peace in the Womb Christmas caroling leaders, is to provide them a handout that they can give to passersby that explains what we're doing. It's got our logo, the All I Want for Christmas is Peace in the Womb, and we explain what we're doing here, and we kind of turn it into something kind of proactive, and said that, we talk about unwanted abortion, and we talk about, you may know someone who is, being forced to have an abortion. If you know someone in that kind of situation, have them contact Option Line. It's a nationwide pregnancy network of pregnancy care centers, and they can help. So to turn it into something, every year, like I said, we've done this event since 2003, and we as much as possible try to add one or two things each year, and that's the new addition this year, is this flyer that we provided people to be able to give to passersby.
So great. If you're just tuning in, this is Ellen White with FaithWorks on Divine Mercy Radio. I'm here with John Jansen, Executive Director of the Pro-Life Action League, and we're talking about the League's mission, their various programs, and the upcoming Peace in the Womb Christmas caroling sessions, and how these efforts help others to engage in the community in defending life. We are so grateful for our show's sponsor, Thales College. And John, going back to this Peace in the Womb Christmas caroling session, I can't help but think about how powerful music is, and especially Christmas carols. And not only during the time that people are going to be hearing these around these abortion clinics, but whatever song might be playing, that's going to resonate with them in years to come. So that is a very powerful strategy, and kudos to you guys for coming up with this.
Absolutely, thank you. And you make an excellent point about music and the power of music, the power of Christmas carols. I mean, I think many of your listeners are familiar with times not too long ago in our history where groups of people, usually kids, would walk around neighborhoods and sing Christmas carols. Sometimes even go knock on people's doors and sing Christmas carols. It was a beautiful thing. It was a beautiful thing, and we're kind of that's what this event kind of taps into. I think is that love for Christmas and love for Christmas music, those familiar carols that everybody knows, especially you learn as children. You hope they have a positive connotation that we're kind of trying to tap into there. But yeah, absolutely. You mentioned about the one particular song that they're going to think about at this time. Our very first Christmas caroling day in Chicago so many years ago. There was at the first time we did this. There was outside the American Women's abortion clinic in Chicago on the north side. There was a woman who, as we were singing Silent Night, came out and said, "I'm here in Silent. I can't do this." And so Silent Night was the one that did it for her. That was the one that and because we stood right by the entrance. We couldn't go on their property, of course, but we stood as close as we could, sing as loud as we could, and it went through the door. And she was able to hear us sing Silent Night, and that's what changed her mind.
That's incredibly powerful. All right, so I want to know, why do you think it's important for individuals to engage the public in this type of outreach, especially during Christmas time?
I think what I would say is that, especially at Christmas time, people are busy. Everybody's busy. They're always running from place to place. I don't know about you, Ellen, but I'm like constantly Christmas shopping and kids, bringing the Christmas concert,
right,
picking up picking up the Christmas ham or whatever. It's that we've all got stuff to do in the Christmas season. It's rushing, and so there's always but I think what we have to do. Well, most important than what we have to do during the season of Advent is to prepare our hearts.
Absolutely.
Okay, to celebrate Christmas, because it's not Christmas yet. We know that, right? We're all Catholic here. It's not Christmas yet. It's Advent right now. We're preparing for Christmas, so we have to prepare our hearts. But and one way that we can do that is to kind of be silent and be prayerful and to be reflective and to do a good thing. We do a good thing. Every time we go to an abortion clinic to pray, to give witness, that's a good thing. And we're remembering, we're kind of every time we do that, especially at a busy time like this time of year, we're remembering, we're taking stock of what it's all about. It's not all about presents and commercialism and everything. It's about, Christmas is about, Advent is about preparing to celebrate the birth of Jesus. And it's a time ultimately of joy, and it's a time of preparation. And so especially at this time of year, that's important.
Yes.
And especially because it's so busy, there may be a local abortion clinic in your area that has kind of regular coverage, if you will, in the form of prayer partners and sidewalk counselors. But because it's Christmas time, people are busy, people are sick this time of year, there may not be as much coverage as there normally is. And so we can go out and kind of be those kind of reinforcements. And so that this time of year especially, it's a really, really good thing to do.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. What a great time to be quiet and singing Christmas carols and reflecting
Absolutely.
on those lives.
Absolutely. And you know what, Ellen? One thing I should mention too is that if there, like, say you live in an area where there's no abortion clinic nearby. Okay, there's always an abortion clinic within some distance.
Yeah, there is. There's one here.
Speaking, there's one far away.
Yeah.
Okay, but say you're, even if you're not able to go to that particular one, let's say you want to you like this event, this idea about singing Christmas carols locally, and you want to just do it somewhere else. Could you do it anywhere? Of course you can. You want to do it in a high pedestrian area, say like at a local Christmas market or a town square or wherever it is, any place where there are people going, you can do that. We know there's one of our groups in Chattanooga, Tennessee. They don't actually have an abortion clinic right nearby, but they just go to a pedestrian bridge and where there's a whole bunch of foot traffic, and they've gotten one of our Peace in the Womb Christmas caroling banners, and they sing Christmas carols that way. It's fine. It's pretty clear what everybody knows Christmas carols, but then they know by the banner, passersby know what the particular reason for their caroling is all about. So this is something that can be done anywhere. Ideally outside of an abortion clinic, but really it can be done anywhere.
Done anywhere, and I'd imagine too it would be good to have the flyers so that people could pass them out if other people were coming up asking and inquiring about what they were doing.
Absolutely.
All right. So what advice would you give to someone, John, who wants to stand up for life but feels unsure about how to do it effectively and compassionately? You kind of answered this at the beginning. You provide the tools in the take action spot, but what else would you say?
That's a really good question, Ellen. I think what I would say is, well, first of all, take it to prayer. Take it to prayer and ask the Lord to communicate to you what He wants you to do. Anything that's worthwhile, that's what we have to start. And from there, you can talk with someone who has some experience. That's what we at Pro-Life Action League are always willing to do for someone who's a little bit unsure what to do. We're happy to talk to someone to kind of say what you might expect. It's interesting. I think, Ellen, did you say how someone can do this effectively?
Yes.
Passionately?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Okay. It's interesting you chose that particular word because it really is because I think about a couple years ago there's a longtime sidewalk counselor in the Detroit area named Edmund Miller. His wife, Dr. Monica Miller, is also a longtime sidewalk counselor.
Very familiar with Dr. Monica Miller.
And yeah, both of them are just really saints, really, really wonderful people. And he talked about this idea about effectiveness, and he talks about how when you go outside an abortion clinic, and because the reality is, I think I'm giving a long answer on, but I'll try to get there eventually.
Sure.
I think when we go to an abortion clinic, the first thing to recognize is that very often, whatever you say, whatever your tone, it could be the most compassionate tone in the world. In all likelihood, women who are planning to go to have abortions that day are going to have them anyway, no matter what you say. So you just have to understand that, that's the reality. There are no magic. The point about this is that there are no magic words.
Right.
There are no, I have to do it this way, or I wasn't compassionate enough, whatever. It's not so much that way. It's important to recognize that. And then very often then, but if you don't realize that, women are probably going to have abortions anyway, you can kind of feel creeping into your head the mind, you're wasting your time. What am I doing here? They're having abortions anyway. How many of them are a couple dozen this day? I've been coming here for weeks at a time. No one's going through. I seem to be having what good am I doing here? And so it's that point when discouragement can really, begin to kind of gnaw at us and think, how effective are you? You're wasting your time. And Edmund Miller talks about this and says that, you know what, in our suffering is our effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about, okay, in our suffering is our effectiveness, because what's our job? Our job is to make an offering of ourselves to God in all that we do, to offer up our suffering. And if we can offer up our sufferings, the fact that ultimately we can't control it. I can't force a woman to not go through with an abortion. All I can do is try to persuade her and to try to convince her to go to the pregnancy care center across the street instead. I can't force her. I can only do what I can. And I can just do I want her to do that? Of course I do. But in our suffering is our effectiveness. I'm not doing justice to what he said, but I think that's
yeah, it really gets the point across.
It really is important, because I think there's a major problem, Ellen, with burnout in the pro-life movement, especially among people who go stand outside abortion clinics and pray at sidewalk council, because we think, if we haven't had a baby saved in a while, it's very discouraging, understandably, because that's the primary reason we go. But we have to remember that, okay, yes, that's the primary reason we go. We want women to change their minds and not go through with the abortion. And when that happens, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. But the reality is that most of them are going to go through with it anyway. And so even though that happens, there's still good that our presence serves in that when that happens. Now, why do I say that? Think about it this way. And I remember this from a video that our founder, Joe Scheidler, did years ago on sidewalk counseling called No Greater Joy, where he talked about, on Good Friday, Mary and Mary Magdalene and John did not save Jesus' life. He still died on Good Friday, but they were with him. They were as close as they could be with him to the end. They were close to Jesus to the last, as the song says, and they were with him when he died. And when we go to an abortion clinic, we are as close to those children as we can be when they die. We're not allowed to go in the abortion clinic. We'll get arrested if we do. But we go as close as we can to be with them when they die. We don't know them. We don't know them personally. We don't know their identities, but we go them because we love them. And so we want to be as close to them as we can when they die. And in so doing, we can show them maybe the only act of love they have this side of heaven. And in doing that, we are being effective that way.
Effective,
so I think you have to remember that.
Yes, effective and compassionate. And I was just sitting here thinking too, John, that it would be, the reality is that we do have listeners, obviously, that have had abortions. And it's important to mention too, if you're not familiar, there's a local Project Rachel group here in Raleigh, and you can go to rachelnc.org for more information about that. And I know that they have a retreat coming up in January, and we'll be speaking to the director soon about that retreat and more information about Project Rachel. Okay, so in the 2 minutes that we have left, John, for those who may not be able to attend in person, what are some other ways to support the League throughout the year, but especially during the holidays?
Well, I would say primarily, you know what? If you can pray for us,
absolutely,
we need it. We at Pro-Life Action League, we at all of any other Pro-Life Action, we need it. We exist. We subsist on prayer support, and we've been around for 45 years. We get the vast majority of our funds come from small donations from mom and pop shops, things like that. We get a small percentage from larger foundations, things like that, but the vast majority comes from small donations. So we need prayer support, because without that, there have been times over the years when it's like, oh my gosh, do we have enough to get by? Are we going to just go bankrupt? So we very much believe in the power of prayer, because without that, the Lord in His providence has given us this work, and it's a privilege to be able to do it. And so we need prayer support. Secondly, I would say, okay, regarding those donations, if you want to donate to support our work financially, we're never going to say no to that, because that is how we are able to continue and do this work that we're allowed to do. Because we have 5 full-time employees and a couple of part-timers, and so we need support to continue that work that the Lord has given us to do. So if you feel called to make a financial gift, we can certainly benefit that way. prolifeaction.org /donate. You can find it that way. prolifeaction.org. There's a donation page. You can make a gift that way as well. We would be very, very grateful for that.
Okay, great. And again, I mentioned earlier in the interview that We had already one Peace in the Womb Christmas caroling session last week, December 13th. Actually, it's today, December 13th, this morning. And there's going to be another one a week from now, December 20th at 7 in the evening. And I spoke to Mark Prokop, who is the local contact for that. And his website or his email address is durhamterp@yahoo.com. That's DURHAMTERP@yahoo.com. You can reach out to him and he can give you additional information if you feel called to participate in the one next Saturday. What a great thing to do. All right, John, thank you so much for sharing your insights.
Ellen, this has been a privilege. I really enjoyed it.
Let's stay in touch. And listeners, you can learn more about the Pro-Life Action League again on their website at prolifeaction.org. Is that right, John?
That's right. Yes, okay. prolifeaction.org.
Awesome. Okay. If you missed any part of this episode or you want to catch up on past conversations filled with inspiration and hope, you can find them all at divinemercyradio.org. Just click on local shows. And don't forget, you can take FaithWorks with you wherever you go. Just download the free Divine Mercy Radio app from your app store. Simply search Divine Mercy Radio NC and you're all set to listen anytime, anywhere. God bless, and let's stand up for life.